My name is Emily Carter. I'm 33, and I thought my birthday dinner would finally be the moment my family looked at me with pride instead of judgment. I booked a private room in one of the nicest restaurants in Manhattan, the kind with soft lighting and white linen that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I belonged in the life I had built for myself. I wore a silk dress I had saved months for, the kind of thing you buy when you want to mark a new chapter. For once, I wanted to feel celebrated, not tolerated. I arrived early, checking every place setting, making sure the flowers were fresh and the candles lit evenly. The waiter smiled at me in that polite way reserved for people who tip well, and I tried to hold on to that feeling like I was someone worth accommodating. When my family walked in, I stood to greet them, heart already racing with hope that maybe tonight would be different. But halfway through the night, while the waiter was pouring another round, my niece Chloe raised her glass. She looked me dead in the eye, that smirk already tugging at her mouth, and before I could even process what was happening, she flung her cranberry vodka straight across the table. The liquid splashed over my dress, staining it in deep red streaks that spread like veins. People gasped. A fork clattered to the floor. I froze, breath caught in my chest as she leaned back in her chair and laughed. "Now you finally look cheap," she said, loud enough for every single person in the room to hear. The waiter stumbled, mumbling apologies, though he had done nothing wrong. My mother reached for Chloe's hand, patting it gently, as though she were the one wounded. My sister Rachel chuckled under her breath, shaking her head like this had been inevitable, like my attempt at elegance was nothing but a joke waiting to be exposed. I sat there, dripping in my skin, sticky, the cranberry running down my ribs and into my lap, trying not to let my face crumble. Around us, the room shifted. Some diners pretended not to notice, suddenly fascinated with their menus. Others looked openly, whispering to one another with widened eyes. I could feel the heat of their pity settling on me heavier than the stains spreading across the silk. For the first time in a long time, I had wanted to be seen. But not like this. I forced myself to smile, to keep my back straight, to give them no satisfaction. Inside, though, something broke. Under the warm lights and polished silver, beneath the clinking glasses and shallow laughter, a quiet voice rose in me, sharp as glass enough. And that night was the beginning of everything that came after. The stain cooled against my skin as if it wanted to stay. A busser rushed over with towels, apologizing as though he were the one who had thrown the drink. I told him it was fine, though my voice betrayed me. My family sat stiff, avoiding my eyes as though silence could erase what had just happened. Chloe tapped on her phone, grinning. My mother sighed, dabbing at the tablecloth instead of acknowledging me. "Accidents happen," she said. "It wasn't an accident," I answered, steady but low. Rachel finally looked up. "You can't expect to show off like this and not get reactions," she said, gesturing at the dress, the restaurant, the life she resented me for. I blotted at the silk, watching the red spread like a bruise. The waiter returned, mortified, and I accepted his offer of dessert just to keep the night moving. Dinner limped forward in strained small talk, but the real conversation sat unspoken between us, heavy as stone. The food itself was perfect: seared scallops, roasted vegetables, glasses of wine that caught the light like jewels, but none of it reached me. Every bite turned to ash in my mouth. Chloe laughed at something on her phone and angled the screen away, and I felt the sting more sharply than the cranberry soaking into silk. My mother complained about the chair, Rachel fussed about parking, and I realized that nothing I provided would ever be enough. When the check arrived, I reached for it out of habit. My mother murmured her usual protest, half-hearted, ritualistic, while Rachel and Chloe watched me sign, their expressions unreadable but sharp. Chloe, sarcastic, so generous, lingered longer than the taste of the food. Around us, I noticed other tables sneaking glances, some whispering, others pretending not to stare. Their pity weighed heavier than the ruined dress. I had wanted this night to be proof that I belonged, that I was worthy of pride. Instead, I was a spectacle. Outside, the cold bit through my dress. Rachel pulled her scarf tighter and urged Chloe to hurry. My mother finally looked at me. "You could have handled that with more grace," she said. "I did," I replied, though she'd never understand what it cost me. At home, I filled the sink with cold water and lowered the dress in. Crimson spread like smoke through porcelain. I stood there, sleeves rolled, watching the stain dissolve my reflection, bent and broken in the ripples. My phone buzzed with a notification, a screenshot sent by a friend who'd seen Chloe's private post. There she was, smirking, captioned, "Guess she finally matches the price tag." For a long time, I just stared at the screen. The words might have gutted me once, but that night, something different took root. The old reflex tugged at me to excuse it to swallow the insult for the sake of peace. Instead, a single word settled inside me, sharp and final. No. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds, sharp and merciless, like it had been waiting all night to interrogate me. I woke with the sour trace of cranberry still clinging to my skin, the dress draped in the sink, as though it were an artifact of war. I stared at it, motionless, until my coffee maker beeped. The silk looked like a wound that had bloomed overnight, and for a moment, I felt as though I were staring at my whole life in fabric expensive, fragile, and stained by someone else's carelessness. I tried to busy myself with routine coffee shower emails, but everything looped back to the night before. Every sip was bitter, every keystroke restless. I replayed my mother's words outside the restaurant. "You could have handled that with more grace." Grace had been my whole life. Grace when I swallowed the slights, when I paid the bills, when I smiled through condescension, disguised as jokes. Grace had been the currency I paid to stay in their circle. And what had it bought me? A silk dress ruined in front of strangers. A niece who believed cruelty was power. By noon, I was pacing phone in hand scrolling through Chloe's social media. My friend's screenshot hadn't been a one-off. Chloe had turned my humiliation into content, a string of clips emojis crying with laughter, captions like, "Cheap wine, cheaper aunt." Her friends piled on, in comments, delighted spectators at my expense. One boy wrote, "She thinks she's high class, but money can't buy class." Another girl added, "Wish I had an aunt that dumb." My chest tightened with each cruel little sentence, not just for the words themselves, but for the way Chloe had let them exist, unchallenged, almost proud. I thought about the other nights I had sent her money for food the day I took her shopping for winter boots, when she said her feet were freezing the birthday I gave her an envelope with enough to cover driver's ed. She had hugged me, then quick but real. I had believed it meant something. I had believed kindness had a half-life. I should have felt rage. Instead, what rose inside me was a strange icy clarity. The truth was so stark, I almost laughed I had financed my own disrespect. Every textbook, every car payment, every night Rachel claimed she was desperate for rent, each dollar had been a down payment on this moment. They hadn't stolen my dignity. I had handed it over, receipt after receipt. I opened my banking app, thumb hovering. Rachel's name appeared beneath a list of authorized cardholders. How many times had she maxed it on clothes or emergencies that looked suspiciously like vacations? My jaw tightened. With 2 taps, the card was deactivated. I expected guilt to creep in, but instead, there was only stillness, like a door quietly shutting in a draft. Then came the car. The SUV Chloe drove was technically mine, purchased under my credit and registration. I'd let her use it as if generosity were the same as love. The paperwork sat neatly in my files. I emailed my attorney, an old college friend turned professional lifeline, explaining that I needed to reclaim the vehicle. His reply was brisk and reassuring. Simple transfer, no contest. I carried my mug to the window and watched the street below. A delivery van double-parked. A cyclist cursed. A kid tugged on his mother's hand. Ordinary life went on. For years, I had convinced myself that keeping my family afloat was my duty, that my sacrifices were invisible bricks in some house of love we were all supposed to live in. But I had built the house alone, and they had thrown parties inside without even inviting me. By evening, the hum in my chest had sharpened into resolve. I wasn't just cutting ties. I was drawing a map of where they ended and I began. My apartment, small but sunlit, felt less like a cave and more like a fortress. I brewed tea and sat at the table, writing a list not of grievances but of boundaries. No more blank checks. No more last-minute rescues. No more swallowing insults with a polite smile. The phone buzzed Rachel, of course. I let it ring. Then my mother. Then Chloe, her name bright on the screen as though she hadn't painted me, as a joke to her friends 12 hours earlier. I muted them all. For once, silence wasn't loneliness. It was relief. As night fell, I walked into the closet and traced the clothes hanging neatly in rows, reminders of a woman who had fought for every inch of her career. Every promotion had been clawed from late nights and cold coffee and the constant whisper that I wasn't enough. I had survived that whisper at work. Why had I let it echo louder at home? I sat on the edge of my bed and whispered aloud just to test the weight of it, no more. The words filled the room solid and unshakable. Tomorrow, I would invite them over. Tomorrow, they would hear me say it to their faces. Sunday arrived colder than expected, the kind of chill that crept under the door and settled into your bones. I spent the morning straightening the apartment, though it was already neat. Straight lines, polished counters, everything in its place, because if chaos was going to walk through my front door, it wasn't going to find company. I laid the folder on the dining table, thick with receipts and printouts. Each sheet carried a memory transfers for Rachel's rent invoices, for Chloe's textbooks, the down payment for the SUV. I added the screenshot of Chloe's post, the caption still curling, like smoke cheap, wine cheaper aunt. Seeing it printed in black and white stripped away the last excuse I might have made for her. At 2 o'clock sharp, the buzzer sounded. I pressed the intercom. Come up. My voice surprised me, calm, almost disinterested, like the verdict had already been delivered. They filed in, wearing the tension of people expecting an apology. My mother led chin high. Rachel followed, lips pursed in practiced indignation. Chloe trailed behind, scrolling her phone until she looked up and caught sight of the folder on the table. Her smirk faltered just slightly. I hope you've had time to cool off. My mother began settling into a chair, as though this were her home. I said, sliding into the seat opposite. And I've had time to think. Rachel crossed her arms. Emily, if this is about Friday night, Chloe was out of line, sure, but nothing. I cut in voice steady. She humiliated me. You both condoned it. And I'm done pretending that's normal. Chloe rolled her eyes. You're really making this into a federal case. This isn't drama, I said. This is respect. And respect is the bare minimum. Silence thickened, only broken by the faint buzz of Chloe's phone. I reached into the folder and spread the papers like a dealer at a high-stakes table. This is 3 years of rent I covered. This is the SUV you drive. These are the credit card bills in my name. And this, I tapped the screenshot, is what I got in return. Rachel's face flushed. You keep track. Who keeps track like that? People who've been turned into wallets, I answered. People who finally realize generosity without respect is just a leash. My mother shifted uncomfortably. Family doesn't keep score. Family doesn't mock each other in public, I said, locking eyes with Chloe. Family doesn't take and take until there's nothing left but resentment. I may have kept the receipts, but you wrote them. Chloe's fingers twitched around her phone. It was just a joke, she muttered, though the confidence had drained from her tone. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. You want to drive? Then buy your own car. As of this morning, the SUV is no longer in your possession. My lawyer already filed the paperwork. Her head snapped up. You can't, I interrupted. Because it was never yours. Rachel's chair scraped loudly against the floor. So what, you're cutting us off after everything we've been through together? After everything I've carried? I corrected. After the nights I paid your rent while you went out with friends. After the trips you called work stress relief. After Chloe's tuition, her car, her books. I have carried you like a mule, and still you called me cheap. For once, Chloe looked away. Her cheeks flushed, not with anger, but with something closer to shame. My mother spoke softly, almost as if she were negotiating. Emily, you don't have to do this. We can put this behind us. Family forgives. Family also respects, I said. And I can't keep pretending you do. Rachel slammed her palm against the table. You think you're better than us just because you make more money. You've always wanted to be above everyone, Emily. Admit it. I felt the tremor of old wounds under her words. No, I said quietly. I've never wanted to be above you. I only ever wanted to stand beside you. But you never let me. The words seemed to cut through the room sharper than the stack of receipts. My mother blinked, startled, while Chloe sank a little lower in her chair. The silence stretched. Then Rachel sneered. "You'll regret this." "No," I said, rising, gathering the papers into the folder. "For the first time, I won't." I walked them to the door, the silence stretching thin as glass. Chloe lingered a moment, eyes flicking to the folder under my arm, then down to the floor. For a second, just a flicker, I thought I saw something like regret. Then she was gone, swallowed by the hallway's dim light. When the latch clicked shut, the apartment exhaled with me. I pressed my back against the door and let the stillness settle. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from release. The line had been drawn, and for once, I hadn't stepped back from it. In the quiet, I almost laughed. The joke wasn't on me anymore. After they left that afternoon, I expected panic to set in, the old urge to chase after them with apologies. Instead, the apartment felt lighter, almost relieved. I brewed tea and watched steam cloud the window, realizing silence could feel like safety. Within days, Rachel's voicemail arrived, angry, then pleading, accusing me of choosing money over blood. I saved it, but didn't call back. The SUV was returned quietly, after my attorney's letter, no drama, just keys in an envelope. Holding them, I felt the weight of closure more than the metal itself. Time moved on. At work, I poured myself into campaigns and even began mentoring a younger colleague who reminded me of myself, eager to please, terrified of failing. I told her the lesson I'd just learned. You're allowed to let things be other people's problem. The words surprised me, but they felt true. The quiet at home stopped feeling like emptiness. I ran at dawn, cooked for myself, and rediscovered the small comfort of solitude. The ruined silk dress stayed in the closet, stain faint but visible. A reminder that beauty doesn't disappear when it's marked, it just carries the memory. Months passed before my mother called. Her voice was tentative. I was unkind, she admitted. I thought keeping the peace was love. I didn't see how much you paid for it. For once, I didn't rush to fix her words. I simply said I wanted you to see me, not just the wallet. Her reply was quiet, but certain. I see you now. Chloe's email came later. She admitted the video shamed her more than it shamed me. She had found a part-time job and standing on her feet for hours had taught her something about humility. "I'm sorry for treating your kindness like an entitlement," she wrote. I told her the college fund still existed, but it came with conditions, respect, responsibility, contribution. She sent her first pay stub the same week. Spring unfolded. My mother and I met for coffee, sharing shortbread and small talk. She confessed she never knew how to mother a daughter who didn't need saving. I reached across the table, not to absolve, but to acknowledge. Repair. I was learning comes in small gestures, not sweeping speeches. By my 34th birthday, the air felt different. I wore a simple navy dress, baked a lemon cake, and invited friends over. Laughter filled my kitchen, cheap candles, dripping wax onto the counter. Someone put on music too loud, and we sang along badly, but it felt like joy, not noise. Then the bell rang. My mother, Rachel, and Chloe stood there. They didn't bring excuses. Rachel handed me job applications from night classes she'd started. Chloe asked if she could cut the cake and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." We didn't mention the restaurant. We didn't need to. The wound had been acknowledged, and the scar was ours to carry differently. Later, when the apartment quieted again, I stood at the window with a plate of lemon cake and thought about every version of myself, the young woman chasing approval, the aunt dripping in cranberry shame, the woman who laid down her receipts like evidence. All of them had led me here. I set the empty plate down and let the night wash over me. Outside, neighbors laughed on the stoop, someone played a saxophone on the corner, and the city felt almost conspiratorial in its reminder. Life keeps moving, and so could I. For the first time in years, I felt part of that movement instead of watching it pass me by. In the corner of the room, the silk dress still hung in its garment bag, faint stain intact. It wasn't ruined, it was transformed. A reminder of the night I broke and the night I rebuilt. I thought of Chloe learning to stand on her own, Rachel piecing her life together without leaning on me, My mother reaching across decades of silence with a single fragile truth. Sometimes love means saying yes. Sometimes love means saying no. Both offered at the right time are a kind of mercy. On my 34th birthday, in a dress that owed me nothing, I finally gave myself both. And for once, that was enough. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.